written up today, not near the front of the newspaper, but I wonder it's at page 10 here in the Courier Mail. These the knife restrictions. Oh no, you won't be allowed to sell knives to underage people or youths or whatever. We're going to curb the youth crime. I can't find anyone that believes this is going to work. We've got kids everywhere in town these days carrying bloody knives and screwdrivers. You've got some of the so-called homeless people confront tourists or locals with glass now, threatening to cut them if indeed they don't hand over some money. I mean, seriously, is this going to make a difference? It says here in this article in the Courier, retail workers face fines worth tens of thousands of dollars if they sell a knife or a gel blaster to juveniles under new laws aimed at curbing youth crime. Anyway, the police minister said the new laws will make it harder for young offenders to access these items. Really? Which are being increasingly used in crime despite being banned from sale to those under 18. There'll be no change to the possession laws, meaning teens will be permitted to use them in their employment. Mr Ryan said even online sellers will be covered by the new laws, which he called another tool in the battle against youth crime. Look, what would I know? What would we know? I put a call through to the gentleman that specialises in crime. He's the Associate Professor in Criminology at Bond University, Dr. Terry Goldsworthy. Hello, Terry.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, Terry. I can't find anyone that thinks this is going to work.
Look, I think it's going to be challenged. At least the government has realised that there's a problem. I mean, since 2019 to 2023, we've seen an 18% increase where knives are the most serious weapon used in various offences. If you look within that, people under the age of 18, juveniles, they've risen by 22%, where we've identified knives as being the most serious weapon used. So at least they've identified the trend that this is getting worse. Look, I agree with your comments. It's problematic in terms of how effective it will be because, these kids are doing break and enters. Well, every time they do a break and enter, they can take 20 knives out of any house
yes,
they go
exactly.
into, I imagine. You're going to have a very big grey market simply by the nature of what these things are. So they won't be able to get a combat knife anymore that's got a serrated edge or a bayonet or anything like that. But they will be able to get a carving knife from a house they break into. And, I think that's almost impossible to stop. So it'll just make it, it'll cut off one avenue that they can use to purchase knives. It's going to put an onus on employers, commercial sellers, places like Myers, Woolies, etc. will all have to comply with this, not just the disposal stores. So it's going to dry up one source of weaponry that they may have accessed, but there's plenty of others out there.
Well, a hell of a lot of these kids actually live in homes that are actually fitted with kitchens.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think in my home, and I've got steak knives in the cutlery drawer. I've got a knife block with about 6 or 7 blades in it that would be sufficient to inflict serious injury. That is the reality of life. That their own house would probably have sufficient weaponry for them if they're that dedicated to or motivated to get them.
I wonder if Minister Ryan looked into that or anyone mentioned it to Mr Ryan that they're living in houses that are fitted with kitchens.
Well, I guess, they're taking a viewpoint that there's clear evidence there's a problem. They've got to be seen to be doing something about the problem. It's interesting, the fines for, these laws that were passed yesterday are actually higher than the fine for someone who actually has the knife in public walking around with it. I think that's probably one area where we need to look at, the potential for serious harm with someone walking around with a knife, I think moves it up and beyond just being a simple offence, which is what it is at the moment, where you can get imprisonment up to 1 year and a fine of up to $6,000. I'd fall over if anyone was fined $6,000.
Exactly.
But, maybe we're not going to stop the supply of weapons as you're highlighting. I mean, it's very difficult to, but where do we get the message across to these kids that if you go out with a knife at night, you're not just going to get a ticket and a couple of $100 fine. It's going to have a serious implication for you because the consequences of them using it are extremely serious.
Yeah, exactly. Just a quick one, because I've had both Keith Hamburger and Martin Bella on this program in recent weeks, both of them saying, listen, we've got to put distance between the predator and their prey. They're saying get them away from these towns that are suffering under this tidal wave of juvenile crime. But in Parliament House, I don't think it's getting much support, is it? There's all these other alternatives that are fundamentally talking about, juvenile crime centres, just like in the southern suburbs of Cairns now, in Edmonton, they're saying what they're going to build another Cleveland. Well, is that going to do the job?
Well, I mean, you've got to stop the short-term offending to have any chance of dealing with the long-term rehabilitation. That's the challenge the government faces. And the problem we've got at the moment is they've got nowhere to put these kids. So they're shoving them in watch houses, which does nothing for rehabilitation. So until you sort out both ends of the pipeline, I don't think there's going to be any change to what we're seeing occurring at the moment.
Not encouraging, Terry, but we'll keep battling away. Always good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
That's Dr. Terry Goldsworthy. He's the Associate Professor in Criminology at the Bond University. 10 to 12.
846 4CA.